lady who stuck her heels into the ground and wouldn't be moved. My admiration for her has increased enormously over the last few years. Give a hand again for Joanna Cherry.
Well, hi everyone. It's really great to be back marching with all under one banner again. I did have an invitation to put my name in the ballot for the coronation, but as anyone who knows me would have guessed, I'd much rather be here with you today than at Westminster. Because, my friends, today is a particularly good day to remind the British establishment that in Scotland, it is the people who are sovereign. Not the Parliament and not the King, but the people. And that's really, really important because our sovereignty as Scots and people who live in Scotland means that we have the right to self-determination. And like all other human rights, it's a right that is universal. The right to self-determination is not a right that uniquely Scotland cannot claim. And I say that no matter what the United Kingdom Supreme Court may have said in a recent court case, which I think was both misconceived and misguided. Scotland has the right to self-determination because the union between Scotland and England is a union of consent. So it's a union that can be ended by the will of the people living in Scotland. And no 25-year-old Devolution Act, no British government and no court can ever deny that basic democratic reality. The union which we currently have with England is 300 years old. So it's constitutional nonsense to say that it can only be brought to an end by a referendum backed by a Section 30 order from an Act of Parliament that's only 25 years old. We need to move away from going cap in hand to the British government asking for a Section 30 order. And instead we need to find another democratic way to express our sovereignty. Now, it's really fantastic to see so many people here today. And like my fellow speakers, we encompass members from several different parties and people who aren't a member of a political party at all. Now, I'm a Scottish National Party MP. That's what I was elected as, and that's what I intend to stay. But for me, it is always country before party. So my loyalty is to my country, the people who live in it, and our Yes movement. Now, our movement for self-determination has come a long way in the last 10 years, and the SNP has had a huge role to play in that. And I know the SNP have hit a bit of a bump in the road at the moment, and we face some challenges, but I can tell you this, no matter how big those challenges are, the SNP is a party with a proud history and some really great people in it. So we're going to sort out our problems and be back in the vanguard of the independence movement. But it's important to remember today that the movement for independence is much bigger than the SNP, and it exists independently of the SNP. In recent days, Alex Salmond has made the point that 10 years ago, this time 10 years ago, the SNP was enjoying support in the high 40s, while support for independence languished at around 30%. But despite the SNP suffering a bit of a dip in the polls, and I think we can make that up, independence now still enjoys sustained support in the high 40s. And I think that's really important. Now, I remember very well in 2012 attending the launch of the Yes campaign 2 years before the referendum, and I remember it because it took place in the cinema complex at Fountain Bridge, which is now just across the road from my Edinburgh South West constituency office. And at the time the independence campaign, the Yes campaign, was launched, support for independence was at 28%. And I have to tell you that despite all the excitement and the hype of the launch of the independence campaign, I was gloomy because I thought we faced an impossible task. But I was wrong. I was completely wrong about that, because support went from 28% to above 50%, and we nearly won in 2014. And even though we didn't win, we've delivered an independence movement that, despite all our ups and downs, is still extremely strong. But unfortunately, that's the good news. Here's not the bad news, but the more challenging news. Support in the high 40s is not enough. What we need to do, and the challenge we face, is to build that support. And in order to do that, we need to bring the sort of people that I meet day in, day out in my constituency who aren't yet convinced of independence. We need to bring them with us. And we ought to be able to do that because these people are disgusted. They're disgusted with Brexit. They're disgusted with the existence of fuel poverty in an energy-rich country. And they're disgusted by the ethical vacuum at the heart of the Conservative and Unionist Party. So we ought to be able to persuade these people, because they know that Scotland can and should do better. But these people aren't yet convinced, because they've got big questions about the economy of an independent Scotland, big questions about cross-border trade, and big questions about going back into the European Union. So there's a lot of hard work to be done answering those questions. And I give you my word today that I'm going to continue to work hard to try and make sure that the Scottish National Party and the Scottish Government use the power invested in us by the Scottish people to answer those questions. You also have my word that I will continue to use such influence as I have within the SNP to make sure the party sorts out its internal problems and devises a strategy that will enable us to hold and win an independence vote. Now, on that issue, like many issues, my friend and my colleague Ash Regan, who spoke earlier, was right during the SNP leadership campaign. She was right that now that the route to another independence referendum is closed off, we need to make sure that at every election, every British general election and every Scottish election, the Scottish National Party and the other pro-independence parties put the issue of independence front and centre in our manifestos. So that in every election, the issue of independence is front and centre until we win a mandate to negotiate with the British government. Now, credit where credit's due, that is the idea that Ash advanced with great courage during the SNP leadership campaign. It's a great idea, and I was really interested to read in the National yesterday that even some of my colleagues who were once implacably opposed to this idea have suddenly been converted to it now and think it's a good idea. And I think that should give us real cause for optimism. So enjoy your day out, keep your spirits up, and go home to your constituencies and prepare for an election on the question of independence. Thank you.
Great speech again there for Joanna.